This story is set in a small town called LaGrance, Ohio, United States. A man named Curtis is standing in his yard when he sees terrifying dark clouds slowly approaching, followed by strange light brown rain that looks like oil. Turns out, it's just a dream. This is what makes the film interesting. Curtis lives with his family, his wife Samantha, who is often called Sam, and their hearing-impaired daughter named Hannah.
Thanks, babe.
One morning, after having breakfast together, Curtis, who works as a construction manager, heads to the project site and goes back to work with his co-worker, Duart.
Happy hour starts at 5, Duart.
Meanwhile, at home, Sam is visited by her two close friends, Nat and Cammy. Nat herself is Duart's wife. Because the storm that afternoon is quite strong, the drilling work at the project site has to be postponed. Curtis then decides to go drinking with his friends. Nat and Cammy also decide to head home together with their children. The next day, while cleaning up junk in the backyard, Curtis once again sees dark clouds gathering, this time accompanied by a tornado funnel. His pet dog keeps barking non-stop. But once again, it turns out to be just a dream. Curtis chooses not to tell Sam about his dream so that his wife won't worry. Then, when he returns to work at the project site and the drilling resumes, Curtis witnesses something strange. A group of crows flying in an unusual pattern. After getting home from work, Curtis and Sam take Hannah to a special therapy center for hearing-impaired children. The goal is to make communication between parents and their child smoother. Then there's a scene where Curtis takes Hannah out in bad weather. A storm and heavy rain suddenly hit, to the point that their car almost gets into an accident while trying to avoid someone on the road. And it turns out all of that is just another one of Curtis's nightmares. The dream feels so real that he wakes up pale and covered in cold sweat. Sam sees her husband's condition and starts to worry, especially since that day Curtis is planning to go out selling things with Hannah. Sam finally says, "It's okay, just rest at home."
Okay.
I'll be all right.
Once Sam and Hannah leave, Curtis starts building a fence for his pet dog using scrap materials he finds around. Then Curtis checks the shelter in the backyard that hasn't been used for a long time. The next morning, Curtis sees Hannah staring out the window without turning around when he calls her. Curious, Curtis walks closer and looks outside the window. And once again, it turns out to be another nightmare. This time, the dream is so terrifying that Curtis wets the bed. Curtis becomes even more restless and ends up snapping at Sam for no clear reason.
I got it.
Ariel 4.
Quietly, he washes the urine-stained bedsheet. Then Curtis takes Hannah to the library. It turns out Curtis is secretly looking for books about mental disorders because he suspects his nightmares are symptoms of a mental illness. After having lunch with the family, Curtis cleans out the shelter until late at night and starts storing canned food inside it. Curtis's behavior only makes Sam more confused. Feeling that something isn't right, Curtis finally consults their family doctor, Dr. Shannon. Curtis talks about his nightmares that have been happening for 4 days in a row. Dr. Shannon says this is still normal and advises Curtis not to eat after 8 p.m., to stop drinking alcohol, coffee, and smoking, and to exercise regularly. Because Curtis insists on getting medication, Dr. Shannon eventually gives him a prescription for a mild sedative for a few days. Dr. Shannon also recommends a friend who is a psychiatrist, considering that Curtis might be experiencing a mental disorder. Meanwhile, Sam goes to the insurance agency where Curtis's company registered their family. The good news is that the insurance approves the cost of a cochlear implant for Hannah's ear, which will greatly help her hearing.
He actually has very good insurance.
That night, Sam shares the good news with Curtis. The mood at home becomes cheerful, and they even plan a vacation to a beach house. Luckily, after taking the sedative, Curtis is able to sleep soundly without any nightmares. While working at the project site, Curtis hears extremely loud thunder several times. But Duwart doesn't hear anything, and the sky looks clear as usual.
What's the matter with you, Curtis?
Suddenly, Curtis feels nauseous, starts coughing, and has trouble breathing, but he manages to calm himself down. After his condition improves, Curtis visits his mother, Sarah. It turns out Sarah suffers from paranoid schizophrenia, and her symptoms began when she was the same age Curtis is now. Curtis asks whether his mother also experienced strange dreams back then. Sarah answers that she didn't have dreams, but often felt panic and had trouble controlling herself.
It was a real stressful time. I couldn't handle things.
I'm sorry.
After that, Curtis calls Dr. Shannon and asks for a recommendation for another psychiatrist in town, because the clinic that was recommended before is too far away. The next day, Curtis borrows a fairly large amount of money from the bank. He uses the money to buy a container and various other equipment. The installments will later be combined with their house mortgage. While at work, Curtis asks Duwart for help building a shelter in the backyard of his house. Duwart starts wondering what Curtis is actually building a shelter like that for. Curtis explains that the shelter will be used as protection from a tornado disaster. Curtis asks Duwart to help him on Saturday when Sam won't be at home. Curtis also plans to borrow some company equipment like a transport truck and earth-moving machinery. Not long after that, Curtis finally meets psychologist Kendra, who was recommended by Dr. Shannon. Since there isn't a good psychiatrist in their town, the choice falls on Kendra. As a psychologist, Kendra can't prescribe strong medication, but at least she can talk with Curtis to help ease his mental burden. Kendra starts asking about Curtis's family background and what his dreams have been like. Curtis explains that out of the 5 symptoms of schizophrenia, delusions, hallucinations, difficulty speaking, disorganized behavior, and negative symptoms, he experiences 2 of them, delusions and hallucinations. According to him, the dreams feel extremely real. Curtis also tells her that his father passed away a few months ago, while his mother suffers from paranoid schizophrenia and had even eaten trash at one point.
Tell me about these dreams.
Columbus.
Curtis then talks about the various nightmares that have been haunting him lately. After the consultation session, Curtis goes to pick up Sam and Hannah from the therapy center. On the way home, while his wife and daughter are asleep, Curtis once again sees booming lightning in the sky. Saturday arrives, and the shelter construction begins. A hole is dug next to the existing small shelter to place the container so the shelter space becomes larger. Sam, who has just returned home, is immediately shocked when she sees what her husband is doing.
Hey.
The 2 of them then talk privately. This is where Sam finally lets out her frustration. Sam is angry because Curtis never told her about the plan to build this shelter, which she thinks is completely unnecessary, especially since he even took out a bank loan, while their finances are actually quite limited. Sam also expresses her concern about Curtis's recent changes in behavior. He's easily irritated, often stays up late in the shelter until night, and goes out of the house without a clear purpose. Curtis, who can't properly explain his reasons, ends up making Sam cry in disappointment. That night, as usual, Curtis takes his sedative before going to sleep, but this time he increases the dose himself to 5 times the usual amount. As a result, while sleeping, Curtis has seizures and even vomits blood. Panicking, Sam immediately wants to call an ambulance, but Curtis refuses and says that he's already feeling better.
Sorry you fellas had...
Seeing how worried and sad his wife is, Curtis finally apologizes and explains everything he's been going through. Curtis tells her about the nightmares that keep haunting him, which always feel very real. The dreams always start with a massive storm, dark clouds, and rain that looks like motor oil. In his dreams, the storm makes everyone go crazy, and some even attack Curtis and Hannah. Their pet dog even bites him, which is why Curtis builds a kennel outside the house. Curtis also talks about his latest dream during the seizure, where Duwart goes insane and tries to kill him with a shovel. Curtis is convinced that these dreams aren't just ordinary dreams, but warnings that something terrible is about to happen. That's why Curtis builds a larger and stronger shelter, to protect his family from the disaster he feels is coming.
I'm a fool.
The next day, Hannah has her ear examination and gets a cochlear implant schedule for next month. Meanwhile at work, Curtis meets his boss and asks for Duart to be transferred out of his team. Curtis does this because he's worried that his nightmare about Duart could become real. Curtis argues that work will run more smoothly if he's not on the same team as his close friend. His boss agrees to the request.
Just be very helpful on this case. Put him with Russell.
After work, the container starts being lowered into the hole that was already dug. On the other hand, Nat, who is visiting the house, shares her concerns with Sam about Curtis's strange behavior lately. However, Sam defends him, saying that her family is fine, including her husband's condition. Then Curtis buys 3 gas masks for his family. But since there isn't a size for a small child, Curtis ends up buying only 2 for himself and Sam. While Curtis continues renovating his shelter, his brother Kyle comes over at Sam's request. Kyle tries to persuade Curtis to stop building the bunker and realize that his behavior has gone too far, wasting money for nothing. Unfortunately, Curtis ignores his brother's words.
She called because she's worried.
No more than anybody else.
Stop that shit right now.
Well,
Curtis instead gives his pet dog to Kyle. Not long after that, it starts raining. Curtis, who goes to the kitchen, sees Sam standing frozen, completely soaked, staring at a kitchen knife. It turns out this is yet another one of Curtis's nightmares, where in the dream, Sam tries to kill him with a knife. The dream makes Curtis paranoid, to the point that when Sam touches his hand in real life, Curtis immediately panics. Not long after, Curtis's project boss comes to the house. It turns out the boss has just found out from Duart that Curtis borrowed company equipment without permission. Duart reports him because he's upset about being transferred from the project. As a result, Curtis is fired not only for borrowing equipment without permission, but also for frequently leaving the project without a clear reason. Ironically, Duart is also fired because it's proven that he helped move the equipment. Curtis's problems get even worse when he tells Sam about being fired. Sam immediately slaps her husband because she knows this is the result of Curtis's own actions. In anger, Sam decides to leave the house with Hannah. After that incident, Curtis goes back to see the psychologist he usually meets. It turns out psychologist Kendra is in training and has been replaced by a new psychologist.
She got into a program. I split her schizophrenia in her early.
Curtis immediately leaves because he doesn't feel like telling the story all over again. Curtis chooses to continue renovating his shelter, which is now equipped with water and electricity. Meanwhile, Sam finally comes home. Sam tries to make peace with the situation and offers their vacation savings to pay off Curtis's debt. For daily expenses, Sam will look for a job and asks Curtis to also find a new one. In addition, Sam asks Curtis to see a truly competent psychiatrist, not a psychologist from a free clinic anymore. The next day, Curtis and Sam take Hannah out to eat at a diner. There, they run into Duart, who is now working as a guard at that place. Duart is still angry because Curtis transferred him from the project before, which ended up getting both of them fired. Without any hesitation, Duart immediately attacks Curtis until a fight breaks out. Filled with emotion, Curtis shouts that he doesn't care about being called crazy because a massive storm is coming and no one is ready to face it. Everyone at the place is shocked and scared by Curtis's behavior, which they see as unstable.
you think I'm crazy? And not already! Millie, you think I'm a thief?
Sam can only hold her husband as he cries hysterically and take Curtis home. When they arrive home, Curtis, who is carrying Hannah, sees a group of crows flying in a strange pattern. Dark clouds begin to gather, thunder roars, and the crows start falling dead. It turns out this is once again Curtis's dream, but when he wakes up, Curtis hears warning sirens blaring all over the city. He immediately takes his wife and daughter to take shelter in the bunker. Curtis and Sam put on gas masks, while Hannah is given an oxygen mask. All night long, the rumbling of the storm sounds extremely loud. Curtis stays awake guarding his sleeping family, until he eventually falls asleep as well. Since there are no signs of poisonous gas getting in, they all take off their masks. Sam asks Curtis to open the bunker door because the storm has passed and the situation might already be safe. At first, Curtis refuses, worried that the disaster is still ongoing. But after Sam insists, Curtis finally opens the bunker door. And what they see, there really was a big storm the night before, but it was just a normal storm that didn't end the world. Curtis instantly regrets all his actions up to this point. Curtis is convinced that he really does have a mental disorder, just like his mother who suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. That same day, Curtis and Sam visit a psychiatrist whose location is quite far away, following Dr. Shannon's earlier recommendation.
What does that mean?
The psychiatrist gives Curtis medication and suggests they go on vacation so Curtis can forget about the bunker at home. A few days later, Curtis, Sam, and Hannah go on vacation to the beach house as originally planned. Curtis looks much happier while playing in the sand with his daughter and starts to forget the nightmares that have been haunting him. But suddenly, Hannah stares at the sky in the distance. Curtis is shocked to see massive dark clouds accompanied by countless tornado funnels. Rain that looks like motor oil begins to fall, and a giant tsunami wave appears on the horizon. At that moment, Curtis realizes that his dreams all this time weren't just imagination, but warnings of a massive disaster that will truly wipe out humanity.